On rare occasions, the backstory to a game is far more interesting than the actual game itself. In today's Mad Musings, you are going to learn about one such game, the ill-fated Cyborg Commando. The pedigrees behind the men responsible for it are top-notch. We're talking Gary Gygax, Frank Mincer, and Kim Mohan, who worked behind the scenes for years at both TSR and WotC. The game's design is the stuff of legend, with overly complicated rules, a generic backstory that won't stop, and surprisingly good tie-in novels. This has led Cyborg Commando to get a bit of a cult following. But did the game get a raw deal? I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to face off against the big bad Xenoborgs. The story of Cyborg Commando starts with the ambush at Sheridan Springs all the way back in 1985. There, TSR made the executive decision to oust its founder, Gary Gygax. While Gary was blown away by the sudden impact of his firing, he didn't linger on the past, so rather than seeking payback or just drowning his sorrows in a bottle of Southern Comfort, he jumped into a new company and started work on a new game, even if TSR was taking an eraser to his legacy. Gary started to look for help with New Infinity's production, and he was looking for the best of the best. Two TSR old guard joined him, with Frank Mincer and Kim Mohan, as stated previously. Forrest Baker, a consultant from TSR, came up with a business plan for the company, but withdrew from the project when he was unable to provide the millions he had offered. Finally, Don Turnbull, noted pinball player and former head of TSR UK, was named CEO. Then, in 1987, Cyborg Commando was launched. The game arrived as a box set, along with a few modules sold separately. It contained 3 books and a pair of dice. You had the Cyborg Commando Force book, which consisted of game rules and character creation. This is the book that you will use 90% of the time unless you needed stats for a particular Xenoborg. The campaign book contains the population of the world, for a good portion of it, broken down in excruciating detail, as well as a force breakdown on the various Xenoborg forces and a small sliver of additional rules. Lastly, there is a GM and a player guide that is mostly cliff notes on how to play, with the player section and the GM sections inverted from each other, and both taking up half the same book. The background of the game starts with the world discovering how to implant a human brain in a cyborg body. The game goes into some detail on the history of how to make cyborgs. Okay, way too much detail. The doctor who invented the process was trying to create a new human form that was incredibly hard to kill, though the process was slow and expensive. The game's reputation for needless exposition is on full display on page 3, as it gives you the exact time for the first cybernetic surgery, the specific nature of the accident that crippled the man that became the first cyborg, and the ultimate disposition of the operating room where the surgery took place. Still, if you need to fill in page count and you're running low on letters, you will find words any which way you can. Then for some reason psychics appeared, or as the books call them, psychogenics. After giving us a detailed description of just about everything you didn't need to know about the creation of cyborgs, the introduction of psychic powers is mostly glossed over. People just started doing psychic things. The world accepted this, and psychics turned out to be the perfect cyborg hosts. The first psychic cyborg embraced her new form eventually, though she did demand to be more human-like. They even created a fake skin for her that looked completely real, but was also bulletproof. The two creators of the Cyborg Commandos were given special favors to improve the technology, making them almost above the law. They sold their technology to various nations, and soon Cyborg Commandos were found in every country. Decades later, and after much explanation that could have been done with a lot less words, the Xenoborgs invaded Earth. Suddenly, humanity was threatened by the ultimate predator of their nightmares, unknowable aliens from beyond. The Xenoborgs destroyed the world's militaries, because of course they did. Humanity fled to caverns and other isolated locations as the invaders overran obvious targets. But the Xenoborgs were about to learn the hard way that mankind was capable of uncommon valor, and when they had nowhere to run, they would unleash their ultimate weapons, the Cyborg Commandos. The game uses its self-titled D10X system, which consists of 2D10 and also showcases a lot of probability charts, like 5 different probability charts on just 2 pages. I tried to explain why they had to include multiple examples of the odds of rolling certain numbers on percentiles, but I don't have 48 hours to fill you in. They literally gave you the phonetic pronunciation of the letter X. When it came to explaining basic mathematical formulas that seemed to be self-explanatory, they were on a mission. Impossible tasks are given a detailed write-up on why it can't be done rather than just saying, you can't do this ability at this skill level. The system itself almost seems to be trying to justify its existence the way it was written. It tells you how to multiply dice together, then tries its best to convince you that this is the best game system ever. There are only 3 stats in Cyborg Commando: mental, neural, and physical. At least in the basic system. As this is a Gygax game, there are differences between men and women, so men get a higher physical stat and women get a higher neural stat. Of course, if you do that today, you would be instantly under siege. I know you're asking, what's the difference between mental and neural? And it's mental is your intelligence and similar attributes, and it's also your number of maximum skills and your willpower. If you want total recall, you're going to want a high mental stat. Neural is your agility and dexterity as well as determining your speed, which means physical is obviously physical strength. It's a basic point-based system with your starting pool at 60. Then you move on to the skills, with the starting number being determined by your mental stat. They have stats for everything. They have more stats than you will ever need, to be honest. The game is laid out like an outline. It gives us a dry and academic look, but you won't have problems finding things. Every skill is broken down into further skills, and those skills are broken down into sub-skills. For example, movement is broken down into 3 different types of movement: personal, mounted, and vehicular. Personal movement is then broken down into 6 more types of movement, with the first category being land-based normal movement, which is broken down into climbing, mountaineering, sprinting, jogging, and running. Man, they even differentiate the gymnastics skill between single and parallel bars. Once you get your skills, then you move on to building your stone-cold cyborg body. This gives you a robotic body with a built-in power source, as well as your own Mad Mac robot computer, which gives you a database of various knowledges. The body is resistant to multiple forms of damage, including impact, lasers, heat, sonic, and cold. You have built-in weapons that use up your power, and a variety of additional equipment, including various tools. If you want additional equipment like barbed wire, you have to spend experience points to buy it, but then you always have access to it. Everybody gets the same Cyborg Commando body, because everybody has the same Cyborg Commando mission: kill and kill again. Alright, enough talk about how you become a Cyborg Commando. It's time to take these bad boys onto the battlefield with the combat section. As you can expect, there's a lot of combat. You aren't exactly going on a shopping excursion in the world of Cyborg Commando. But first, acronyms. There are 4 turns you have to use in the exciting world of Cyborg Commando: combat, action, standard, and travel, or cast. A combat turn is 8.6 seconds, an active turn is 1 minute 26.4 seconds, a standard turn is 14 minutes 24 seconds, and a travel turn is 144 minutes. Those are some oddly specific turn lengths, but if you need to get within striking distance, at least you know how many seconds you have to get there. While combat in Cyborg Commando is meant to be deadly, sudden death is actually pretty rare. Combat is dictated by combat turns, which are 1/10,000th of a day, which is something they thought was important enough to tell you. No matter how fast you move, you only get 1 attack per phase, even if you have invoked Ultra Speed, which makes you a combat blur. You still don't get a double impact attack. Initiative works oddly in Cyborg Commando. If you want to draw first blood, you have to shoot the right kind of weapons. Everybody declares what they're doing in the command step, and then actions are determined in the order of the weapon being used. Zap weapons go on phase 1, while physical attacks wait till turn 5. As hitting targets is pretty easy in Cyborg Commando, you'll need to make yourself a hard target once you have a death wish. There's a lot of terrain modifiers, as well as varying degrees of cover. If you find yourself on deadly ground, the first thing you need to do is get behind a wall or similar. Some terrain provides better cover than others, but often at the expense of decreasing your movement speed. Strangely enough, there's no modifiers for the time of day, so daylight and nighttime don't adjust any attack rolls, at least according to the rules. You can also use additional combat skills to attack if the situation presents itself. There's a lot of different combat skills available if you suddenly have the urge to shoot the Xenoborgs with a trebuchet. I'm not kidding. There are skills for slings, catapults, cannons, screwdrivers, ancient blunt agricultural tools, bike chains, and of course there's a half a dozen skills for various types of demolition. Man, if you can think of a new way to kill somebody, they have the skill for it. You will go last in the combat phase, so if somebody wants to zap you, they will take priority. If you both want to zap each other, then you get to go at the same time. So if you both decided for a called shot, there's a good chance it's going to be an eye for an eye. The game's advanced combat system is just more ways to hurt people, with yet another table of interesting injuries. If you roll doubles, then you get to roll a critical hit and roll on the special damage chart. Roll a d10 and see what part you blow off. This does work both ways, so if you take a few double damage results on the extra damage chart, they will be identifying your next of kin sooner than later. Take a few shots to your optics and suddenly you're stuck in blind fury mode with no visual input. However, you don't take additional damage from headshots as your brain is encased in your armored torso. Armor is easy to add to your Cyborg Commando. Shrugging off heavy weapons isn't a problem. You can even survive terminal velocity with just a few scratches. The enemy of the Cyborg Commando, of course, are the Xenoborgs. These creatures come in a variety of forms, but mostly as cyber-psycho woodgrubs. They come in a variety of size categories, sorted by rank, so the private Xenoborgs are the smallest, while the largest and most dangerous Xenoborgs are the generals. This is a common theme with Gygax board games, where officers are far more dangerous than basic grunts or even more experienced NCOs. The bigger the Xenoborg, the more abilities they have. For the biggest ones, they live no matter how much firepower you dump into it. Like Starship Troopers, eliminating the biggest Xenoborgs is top priorities for the Cyborg Commandos. However, Xenoborgs are not a hive mind, so the simple removal of a general can turn a battle. As far as the Cyborg Commandos are concerned, Xenoborg generals are wanted dead or alive. The bigger the bugs you kill, the faster you go up in rank. Now, you may ask yourself, if I'm such a hard-boiled lethal weapon with built-in weapons of death and bulletproof skin, why didn't this game take off? Mainly because the rules are all over the place. The skill list for a game about shooting space bugs contains rules for entertaining guests at parties, maritime veterinary science, and sex-related crimes. The last one does raise an eyebrow, but at least they didn't expand on it. It's like the editor was missing in action. The explanation for the dice rolling chart has far too many instructions. To accomplish a difficult task requires you to roll a 10 on one die. Hard, yes, but it doesn't need a paragraph telling you how much of a long shot that die roll is. There's rules for FTL travel that require calculating square roots as well as putting everything together in exponential formulas. It's got lots of complicated math nobody is going to have fun calculating. The scope of the game is quite narrow. It's you against the Xenoborgs. They have one shape and various sizes. Sure, you can throw regular humans at your Cyborg Commandos in a blazing gun battle to see who's the last man standing, but your characters outclass them in every way with your damage resistance and your built-in weapons. It's a military game. The players don't want to spend a lot of time on downtime activities. They want to be loaded up with weapons and unleashed on the bad guys. Sure, there's other monsters to fight, like the Teleborgs, Masters, or Powers with 2 Ws, but they have little more than a single column describing them. The scenarios provide little more than just the same adventure in a different format. There's only so many ways to fight bugs. A lot of them are just the players getting informed that a big bug, strategic location, or a potential traitor is marked for death, and it's their job to take it out. Other times you just go there and kill lots of bugs. The issue that always comes up in games like this is you can only run the same scenario so many times before the players are going to get tired of it. In short, the premise behind the game was too limited. The layout of the book is often confusing and poorly laid out. The wording in much of the game would make an editor take a machete to it. But after TSR, Gygax had a poor history with editors, something that would actually contribute to the downfall of Games Designer's Workshop when he went to work for them after New Infinity's productions failed. It doesn't matter who the writer is, they still need an editor. Just ask George Lucas. The first part of the campaign guide is practically useless. It's just page after page of listing various nations and their cities. Then the cities are sorted by their current population after the adventure, as well as their longitude and latitude. Many of the nations are referred to using their name in their native language, which would be confusing to people who don't know, for example, that Austria is called Österreich in German. But since there's absolutely no information past their listing, it's more of a curiosity of design. It's 35 pages of charts. You're not even going to bother reading them because there's no real use for the information. It's half a book wasted for a game that's already short on useful information. The oddity of Cyborg Commando is that the 3 tie-in novels, all written by Pamela O'Neill, are actually pretty good. They fill out the game world. They give you a better vision of the setting that the RPG doesn't. Yes, they leave you on a cliffhanger, but if you like sci-fi pulp adventures, there are worse options. As there isn't much of a demand for the novels, you can get them for about $5 on various sites. A copy of the RPG goes for as low as $30. There isn't much demand for the game either. A few of the modules, however, are pretty pricey. The legacy of Cyborg Commando has one more victim, as Gary wanted to create a new fantasy game, but the failure of Cyborg Commando doomed his company. He would bring Infinite Adventures to GDW, producers of Traveller and Twilight 2000, among many other games, where it would become Dark Dimensions and later Dangerous Journeys. Then, of course, GDW got sued out of business by TSR. Speaking of TSR and doomed games, the next Mad Musings will be us looking at one of the least wanted RPGs in history, the Buck Rogers in the 21st Century game, or what happens when the boss wants to take advantage of owning an unrelated IP. But until then, remember, if it bleeds, we can kill it.